The violent crack of thunder split the air as Olivia Winslow crumpled the unwanted marriage proposal in her trembling hand, her father's ultimatum still ringing in her ears. Accept wealthy landowner Harold Briggs or face disownment. The year was 1876 in Fort Stockton, Texas, and at 22, Olivia had just committed the unforgivable sin of wanting to choose her own fate. "I won't do it, Father," she said, her voice stronger than she felt as she stood in the parlor of their substantial home. "I cannot marry a man 3 times my age simply because he has offered you favorable cattle prices." Thomas Winslow's face flushed crimson beneath his gray beard. "You ungrateful child. Do you have any idea what this alliance means for our family, for our standing in this town?" Her mother, Eleanor, dabbed at her eyes with an embroidered handkerchief. "Think of your sisters, Olivia. Who will want them after you've shamed us this way?" Olivia looked at her younger sisters, Clara and Rebecca, who sat wide-eyed on the settee. At 18 and 16, they were already being groomed for similar arrangements. The thought made her stomach churn. "I'm not shaming anyone by refusing to sell myself," Olivia replied, though her voice caught. "Mr. Briggs buried 2 wives already, both younger than 30. Her father slammed his fist against the mantelpiece. "You will accept his proposal by week's end, or you will no longer be welcome in this home. I've given you everything, education included, and this is how you repay me." Olivia straightened her spine, though tears threatened. "Then I'll leave. Today." Within the hour, she had packed her few personal belongings, some clothes, her mother's silver hairbrush, a book of poetry, and the small inheritance from her grandmother that her father couldn't touch. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. As she descended the staircase with her carpet bag, her mother rushed forward. "Please reconsider," she whispered urgently. "Your father means what he says." "I know he does." Olivia squeezed her mother's hand. "But I cannot live a life of quiet desperation, Mother, not even for you." Her sisters watched from the landing, tearful but silent. Her father stood by the door, his expression stony. "You bring this shame upon yourself," he said as she passed. "Don't expect charity from those who know you're a disobedient daughter." The door closed firmly behind her, the sound final as a coffin lid. Standing on the porch of the only home she'd ever known, Olivia felt the first tendrils of fear creep through her determination. Fort Stockton was no place for a single woman without family protection. She had teaching experience from helping at the local school, but would anyone hire her now? She made her way toward the town's only boarding house, hoping Mrs. Fletcher might take her in temporarily. The older widow had always been kind to her. As she walked down the dusty main street, she felt eyes on her, curious, judging, pitying. News traveled faster than wildfire in a town this size. The boarding house was a simple 2-story structure with a sagging porch and peeling white paint. Olivia climbed the steps and knocked, adjusting her bonnet nervously. Mrs. Fletcher opened the door, her gray eyes widening in surprise. "Miss Winslow, what brings you here at this hour?" Olivia swallowed her pride. "I find myself in need of accommodation, Mrs. Fletcher. I've left my family home." Understanding dawned on the older woman's face. "This about old Briggs' proposal, ain't it? Words already spread." She glanced furtively up and down the street. "I'd like to help you, dear, truly, but your father's one of the most influential men in town. I can't afford to cross him." Olivia's heart sank. "Please, Mrs. Fletcher, just for a night or 2 until I can make other arrangements." The widow shook her head regretfully. "I'm sorry, girl, truly, but times are hard and I need your father's good opinion to keep my business afloat." She hesitated, then pressed a few coins into Olivia's palm. "The stage to El Paso leaves at dawn. Perhaps you'd find better prospects there." The door closed gently but firmly, leaving Olivia alone again. She pocketed the coins and turned away, fighting tears. Where could she go? Night would fall soon, and a woman alone after dark invited trouble. She walked toward the general store, hoping Mr. Peterson might allow her to sleep in his storeroom for the night. As she approached, she noticed a small group of cowboys outside the saloon across the street. They weren't locals, probably passing through with a cattle drive. One of them, tall with a dark hat pulled low, leaned against a hitching post watching her. Uncomfortable under his scrutiny, Olivia quickened her pace. She'd nearly reached the general store when she heard rapid footsteps behind her. "Miss, excuse me, miss." She turned to find the shopkeeper's wife, Mrs. Peterson, hurrying after her, looking distressed. "I'm afraid I can't help you, Miss Winslow," the woman said without preamble. "Your father's already been by. Said you'd be asking for assistance and that anyone who provides it will lose his business." Olivia felt as though she'd been slapped. "He came by already, but I only just left. He rode straight here, went to every establishment in town." Mrs. Peterson looked genuinely sorry. "We can't afford to cross him, miss, not with 3 children to feed." Stunned, Olivia nodded mechanically. "I understand. Thank you for telling me directly." As the shopkeeper's wife retreated, Olivia stood frozen in the gathering dusk. Her father had anticipated her every move and deliberately cut off all her avenues of support. She had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. For the first time, genuine fear replaced her determination. "Seems like you're having a rough day, madam." The deep voice startled her. She whirled to find the tall cowboy from across the street standing a respectful distance away. His face, now visible beneath his hat, was tanned and weathered, with startlingly blue eyes. He wasn't much older than her, perhaps 26 or 27. "I don't believe that's any of your concern, sir," she replied stiffly, though her voice trembled. He nodded, showing no offense at her sharp tone. "Quinn Forrester," he offered, tipping his hat. "Heard some talk at the saloon. Sounds like you're in a bind." "Gossip travels fast," Olivia said bitterly. "Small towns," he shrugged. "Faster than telegraph sometimes." She clutched her bag tighter. "If you'll excuse me, you need somewhere to stay tonight," he stated matter-of-factly. "And from what I gather, nobody in town will risk crossing your father to help you." Olivia flushed with humiliation. "As I said, it's none of your concern." Quinn Forrester studied her for a moment, then said something that stopped her in her tracks. "That takes courage, you know." She blinked. "I beg your pardon, standing up to your family, refusing to marry someone you don't want to, walking away from comfort for the sake of your principles." His expression was serious. "That takes genuine courage." The unexpected acknowledgement nearly undid her. After a day of being made to feel shameful and ungrateful, his simple statement of respect threatened to break the dam of her composure. She swallowed hard. "Thank you," he nodded, then gestured down the street. "Our outfit's camped just outside town. Trail boss is a good man straight as they come. His wife travels with us. Name's Martha. She could use a hand with cooking for 20 cowboys." He paused. "If you're interested." Olivia hesitated. Going to a camp full of unknown men seemed dangerous, but staying in town with nowhere to sleep seemed equally perilous. "Why would you help me? You don't know me." Quinn's mouth quirked slightly. "My sister was forced to marry a man she despised, died in childbirth a year later." His eyes darkened with old grief. Always wished somebody had helped her find another way. The simple honesty in his voice convinced her more than elaborate assurances could have. "Your trail boss's wife. She wouldn't mind. Martha's always complaining she needs help. 20 hungry cowboys is a lot to feed." His expression grew serious again. "I won't pretend it's an easy life, but it's honest work with honest pay, and nobody out there cares about Fort Stockton politics." Olivia glanced back at the town that had been her home all her life, where every door was now closed to her. What choice did she really have? Very well, Mr. Forrester. I accept your offer. Quinn, he corrected, keeping a respectful distance as they began walking toward the edge of town. Nobody calls me Mr. Forrester except bankers and lawmen, and I try to avoid both. Despite everything, Olivia found herself smiling faintly. In that case, I'm Olivia Winslow. As they left Fort Stockton behind, Olivia felt a strange mixture of terror and exhilaration. She was leaving behind everything familiar, heading into uncertainty with strangers. Yet for the first time in her life, she was making her own choice. The cattle drive camp sprawled across a flat stretch of land a mile outside town. Cook fires dotted the gathering darkness, and the lowing of cattle created a constant background rumble. Cowboys moved between the fires, some playing cards, others mending equipment. Quinn led her toward the chuck wagon, where a sturdy woman with iron-gray hair was vigorously kneading dough. "Martha," Quinn called, "brought you some help." The woman looked up, flour dusting her weathered face, and eyed Olivia with frank curiosity. This the girl everyone in town's talking about, the one who told old man Briggs to take a long walk off a short cliff. Olivia flushed. "I wasn't quite that explicit, madam." Martha's face cracked into a wide grin. "Pity. Man like that deserves explicit." She wiped her hands on her apron. "You know how to cook, girl?" "Yes, madam, and I can read and write as well if that's of any use." "Education, fancy?" Martha nodded approvingly. "Quinn tell you what we're offering, room such as it is board and $5 a week." It was a modest sum, but more than Olivia had expected. "That's very generous." "Not generous, fair, works hard." Martha gestured to the wagon. "You'll sleep in there with me. My husband Frank snores something fierce, so he bunks with the men." She paused, expression turning serious. "Should warn you were headed to El Paso, then on to Arizona territory. Long journey, 3 months at least." The distance was daunting, but Olivia squared her shoulders. "I understand." Martha studied her a moment longer, then nodded decisively. "Right then. Stow your things and wash up. Biscuits won't make themselves." As Martha turned back to her work, Quinn tipped his hat. "I'll leave you to it. Frank's over by the main fire if you need anything." "Mr. Forrester Quinn," Olivia corrected herself. "Thank you." He held her gaze for a moment. "Like I said, takes courage." Then he was gone, striding toward a group of men by one of the fires. The next few hours passed in a whirlwind of activity. Martha was a demanding taskmaster but a good teacher, showing Olivia how to manage the massive cast-iron pots and cook for large numbers. By the time the cowboys lined up for dinner, Olivia's back ached and her hands were raw, but she felt a strange satisfaction. "You ain't half bad," Martha commented as they served stew and biscuits. "Might make a chuck wagon cook of you yet." The men were surprisingly respectful, tipping their hats and thanking her politely as she ladled stew. Most avoided direct eye contact, as if sensing she was unused to such rough company. Quinn came through the line last, offering a small nod. "How's it going?" he asked quietly. "Well enough," she replied, surprised to find she meant it. "Good." He accepted his portion with a nod. "We move out at first light. Early days are the hardest until you find your rhythm." After dinner, while helping Martha clean up, Olivia finally asked the question that had been bothering her. "Won't people think? That is, a single woman traveling with so many men." Martha snorted. "Girl, I've been on cattle drives for 15 years. Anyone who knows Frank Hollister's outfit knows he runs a clean camp." Her expression softened slightly. "But yes, some folks will talk. Question is, do you care what they think?" Olivia considered this. "I suppose I've already done the worst thing possible in their eyes by refusing a respectable marriage." Then you're free, Martha said simply. Nothing more liberating than having nothing left to lose. That night, curled on a bedroll inside the chuck wagon, Olivia stared at the canvas ceiling. She could hear the night sounds of the camp men's low voices, occasional laughter, the persistent lowing of cattle. It was all so foreign, so far from the sheltered life she'd known. For the first time, doubt crept in. Had she made a terrible mistake? Should she have swallowed her pride and married Harold Briggs? At least then she'd have security, comfort, respect in town. But at what cost? Becoming the third young wife of a man who viewed women as property, bearing children for someone she could never love. Watching the light in her own eyes die as it had in her mother's. No. Whatever hardships lay ahead, she had made the right choice. With that certainty, Olivia finally drifted into an exhausted sleep. The cattle drive's departure at dawn was organized chaos. Cowboys herded the bawling cattle while Martha and Olivia scrambled to pack the chuck wagon and prepare a quick breakfast of coffee and leftover biscuits. Frank Hollister, a barrel-chested man with a booming voice and kind eyes, came over to introduce himself properly. "Miss Winslow," he said, tipping his hat. "Martha tells me you're quick to learn. That'll serve you well out here." His gaze turned serious. "Quinn told me about your situation. Want you to know you've got nothing to fear from my men. Anyone who forgets his manners answers to me." "Thank you, Mr. Hollister," Olivia replied, touched by his gruff concern. "Frank," he corrected with a smile. "We don't stand on ceremony in the dust." As the drive began moving north, Olivia experienced her first full day of trail life. The chuck wagon bounced mercilessly over the rough terrain, rattling her teeth and bruising her in places she didn't know could bruise. Martha showed her how to secure the cooking equipment and provisions so nothing broke or spilled. "You get used to it," the older woman assured her, seeing Olivia wince at a particularly violent jolt. "By Arizona, you'll be sleeping through the worst bumps." They traveled until midday, then halted to rest the cattle during the worst heat. While the cowboys ate a cold lunch, Martha took the opportunity to teach Olivia how to build a cooking fire that would produce the right kind of coals. "Secret to good trail cooking is preparation," she explained. "Can't be fussing with your fire when you've got hungry men waiting." As they worked, Olivia noticed Quinn approaching on horseback. He'd been riding flank all morning, keeping the cattle in line, and dust coated his clothes and face. "Ladies," he called, dismounting smoothly. "Frank says to tell you we'll make camp early today. Creek about 3 miles ahead." Martha nodded. "Good, could use a proper wash-up." Quinn's eyes shifted to Olivia. "How are you holding up?" She straightened, determined not to appear weak. "Quite well, thank you." A hint of amusement touched his eyes. "You've got more grit than most greenhorns I've seen." He tipped his hat and returned to his horse. Martha watched him go with a knowing look. "That boy's taken a shine to you." "Don't be ridiculous," Olivia said, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. "He's simply being kind." "Mmmm." Martha returned to her demonstration. "Quinn Forrester's a good man. Best horseman in the outfit. Been riding with Frank for 5 years now." "What's his story?" Olivia found herself asking, then immediately regretted the show of interest. Martha shrugged. "Not much to tell. Family had a small ranch in Colorado, lost it in '73 during the panic. Father died soon after. He's been driving cattle ever since, sending money home to his mother and younger brother." She glanced at Olivia. "Honorable sort. Rare enough these days." That evening, as promised, they made camp by a small creek. While the men tended the cattle, Martha showed Olivia how to set up a private bathing area using the wagon and some blankets as a screen. "Men know better than to come near when the blanket's up," she explained. "You go first while I start dinner." The cool water was bliss after the dusty, sweaty day. Olivia washed quickly but thoroughly, conscious of the exposed position despite the screen. As she was dressing, she heard footsteps approaching and froze. "Miss Olivia," Quinn's voice. "Martha asked me to bring you fresh water for drinking. I'll just leave it by the wagon wheel." "Thank you," she called, relieved by his respectful distance. "Also," he added, "Frank asked if you'd be willing to keep records for the drive. Said Martha mentioned you can write." Olivia finished buttoning her dress and emerged from behind the screen, hair still damp. "What kind of records?" Quinn stood several paces away, his back half turned to give her privacy. When he heard her emerge, he faced her but kept his eyes politely at her eye level. "Inventory, expenses, that sort of thing. Frank's honest but not much for numbers," he shrugged. "It's extra work, but he'd pay another $1 a week." The prospect of additional responsibility and income was appealing. "I'd be happy to help," Quinn nodded. "Good, he'll talk to you after dinner." He hesitated, then added, "You're adapting well. Not everyone would, coming from your background." "I'm not sure what choice I have," Olivia admitted. "There's always a choice," Quinn replied. "You could have married that old man, lived comfortably, never had to work." His blue eyes held hers. "Takes character to choose the harder path because it's right." Before she could respond, he tipped his hat and walked away, leaving Olivia to wonder why his good opinion meant so much to her. Over the next 2 weeks, Olivia settled into the rhythm of trail life. The work was hard the days long, but she found unexpected satisfaction in mastering new skills. Martha proved to be a patient teacher, and Frank was pleased with her meticulous record-keeping. The cowboys, initially awkward around her, gradually accepted her presence. Most were young men not much older than she was, working to send money to families or save for their own futures. They were rough around the edges but fundamentally decent, their manners improving markedly in her presence. Quinn kept a respectful distance, but Olivia often caught him watching her. Sometimes during the evening meal, he'd join her and Martha by the fire, sharing stories of previous cattle drives or news picked up in the last town they'd passed through. His quiet competence and dry humor drew her, despite her best intentions to remain detached. One evening, as they camped near a small river, Olivia was finishing the dishes when she heard shouting from the direction of the herd. Looking up, she saw cowboys racing toward the cattle, which had begun to stir restlessly. "Storm coming," Martha explained, appearing beside her. "Help me secure the wagon." They worked quickly to cover provisions and tie down loose items as the wind picked up. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and the first fat droplets of rain began to fall. "Where's Quinn?" Olivia found herself asking as they finished. Martha pointed toward the herd. "Out there with Frank, trying to keep the cattle from stampeding. Lightning spooks them something fierce." As if on cue, a brilliant flash lit the darkening sky, followed immediately by a deafening crack of thunder. The cattle bellowed in fear, and Olivia could see the cowboys struggling to contain them as the rain intensified. "Shouldn't we do something?" she asked, watching anxiously. "Best thing we can do is stay out of the way," Martha replied grimly. "Come on into the wagon." For the next hour they huddled in the relative dryness of the chuck wagon as the storm raged. Olivia could hear shouts and the thunder of hooves, and her concern grew. Finally, the storm began to ease, the thunder receding into the distance. Martha peered out. Rain's letting up. "Let's see what damage we've got." Outside, the camp was a muddy mess, but the wagon had weathered the storm intact. In the distance, Olivia could see riders returning, their silhouettes visible in the faint moonlight now breaking through the clouds. "Looks like they kept most of the herd together," Martha said with relief. "Could have been much worse." As the men returned, Olivia hurried to help Martha prepare hot coffee. The cowboys were soaked and exhausted, their faces streaked with mud and weariness. Frank arrived, shaking water from his hat. "Lost about 20 head," he reported to Martha. "Not too bad, all things considered." "Everyone accounted for?" Martha asked, handing him a steaming cup. "All but Quinn and Jeb. They went after some strays that bolted east. Should be back soon." Olivia felt a flutter of worry but kept busy, serving coffee and helping tend to minor injuries: a twisted ankle, a rope burn, a cut from a fall. An hour passed with no sign of the missing men. Then, too. "I don't like this," Frank muttered, peering into the darkness. They should have been back by now. Just as he was organizing a search party, they heard hoofbeats. A single horse emerged from the darkness, carrying 2 riders. Even from a distance, Olivia could see one man was slumped against the other. "Get the medical kit," Frank ordered sharply. Olivia rushed to retrieve it as the horse approached. Quinn was in the saddle, supporting an unconscious Jeb in front of him. Both were soaked and covered in mud, but Jeb's shirt was dark with what looked like blood. "Lightning spooked his horse," Quinn explained as they carefully lifted Jeb down. "Threw him against some rocks, found him about 2 miles east." While Frank and the others tended to Jeb, Olivia noticed Quinn sway slightly as he dismounted. In the lantern light, she could see a ragged tear in his shirt sleeve, also stained with blood. "You're hurt," she said, moving to his side. "It's nothing. See to Jeb. Martha and Frank have him." Olivia took Quinn's arm firmly. "Come sit by the fire before you fall over." Too exhausted to argue, he allowed her to lead him to a crate near the fire. As he sat, she could see him fighting to stay upright. "Let me see your arm," she insisted. "Really, it's just a scratch, then you won't mind me looking at it." Without waiting for permission, she pushed up his torn sleeve. A deep gash ran from his elbow halfway to his shoulder, still oozing blood. "This is not nothing, Quinn Forrester." "Had worse," he mumbled, but didn't resist as she began cleaning the wound with water from her canteen. Martha brought over the medical kit. "Jeb's got a nasty head wound and maybe some broken ribs, but Frank thinks he'll pull through." She eyed Quinn's arm. "That needs stitching." "I can do it," Olivia said, surprising herself. At Martha's questioning look, she explained, "My mother taught all her daughters basic medical care. I've stitched wounds before." Martha nodded approvingly. "Good, I'll see to Jeb." She handed Olivia a needle, catgut thread, and a bottle of whiskey. Quinn eyed the supplies warily. "Don't suppose that whiskey's for drinking?" "Some," Olivia allowed with a small smile. "After I clean the wound." She poured a generous amount over the gash, making him hiss between his teeth. "Sorry." "No, you're not," he grumbled, but there was no heat in it. As she threaded the needle, Quinn took a swig from the bottle. "How'd you learn to do this? Doesn't seem like standard education for a banker's daughter. My mother believed women should know practical skills." Olivia began stitching carefully, trying to be gentle despite her lack of practice. "She said you never know when life might take unexpected turns." "Wise woman," Quinn said, watching her work with an intensity that made her cheeks warm. "She is," Olivia agreed, focusing on her task, though she still believes a woman's highest calling is a good marriage. "And you don't." She tied off a stitch before answering. "I believe marriage should be a partnership, not a business transaction or a prison sentence." She risked a glance at his face. "Is that so radical?" Quinn was silent for a moment. "No," he finally said. "That's how my parents were, partners in everything." His expression softened with memory. "My father used to say my mother was the best decision he ever made, not because she was beautiful or because her father had good land, but because she made him better than he was alone." "They sound wonderful," Olivia said, finishing the last stitch and cutting the thread. "They were." Quinn's voice held old grief. "She died when I was 16, influenza. Father was never the same after." He took another drink. When the bank took our ranch, I think it just broke something in him. He died 6 months later. I'm sorry, Olivia said softly, wrapping a clean bandage around his arm. Been a long time now. He studied her as she worked. What about you? Why'd you really refuse to marry Briggs? Was it just his age? Olivia secured the bandage, buying time to consider her answer. Partly, but mostly. I watched what happened to my mother. She was vibrant once, full of ideas and passion. My father didn't beat her or treat her cruelly. He just diminished her year by year, decision by decision, until she became this shadow who only speaks when spoken to. She met Quinn's eyes. I'd rather die than live that way. The intensity of his gaze made her breath catch. Good, he said simply. For a moment neither spoke, connected by something deeper than words. Then Martha called for Olivia's help with Jeb breaking the spell. Thank you, Quinn said as she gathered the medical supplies. For the arm and the conversation. You're welcome, she replied, suddenly shy. Try not to tear my handiwork before it heals. His smile followed her as she walked away, warming her more than the campfire ever could. The drive continued northward, the daily routine now familiar to Olivia. Jeb recovered slowly but steadily, and Quinn's arm healed cleanly, the stitches holding despite the physical demands of his work. Olivia found herself watching for him throughout the day, their conversations becoming a highlight she anticipated eagerly. They crossed into New Mexico territory, the landscape gradually changing from the flat plains of Texas to more varied terrain with low hills and deeper ravines. The work grew more challenging as they navigated difficult passages, but the outfit adapted, moving steadily toward their destination. One evening, after the camp had settled for the night, Quinn approached Olivia as she sat by the fire, working on the drive's accounts. Got something for you, he said, sitting beside her. From his pocket, he produced a small leather-bound book. Found this in the last trading post. Thought you might like it. Olivia accepted the book with surprise. It was a collection of poetry by Emily Dickinson. How did you know I like poetry? He shrugged, looking slightly embarrassed. Noticed you had a book of poems in your bag that first day. Figured you might want something new to read. Touched by his thoughtfulness, Olivia ran her fingers over the simple binding. Thank you, this is very kind. It's nothing, he said, but his pleased expression belied his casual tone. Over the next few weeks, their friendship deepened. During rest periods, they'd often sit together, Olivia reading aloud from her new book while Quinn whittled or mended tack. Sometimes he'd tell her about places he'd seen on previous drives, painting vivid pictures of mountains and deserts she'd only read about one afternoon. As the outfit paused during the midday heat, Quinn found Olivia sketching in a small notebook. Didn't know you were an artist, he commented, peering over her shoulder at her drawing of the chuck wagon. Hardly, she laughed. Just a hobby. My drawing teacher always said I had more enthusiasm than talent. Looks good to me, Quinn said, sitting beside her. Mind if I look? She hesitated, then handed him the notebook. He flipped through carefully, studying each sketch: the cattle, the landscape, several of the cowboys at various tasks, Martha kneading dough. These are really good, Olivia, he said, genuine admiration in his voice. Then he paused, coming to a page she'd forgotten about: a sketch of him, leaning against his horse, face half shadowed by his hat. Heat rushed to her cheeks. I hope you don't mind. You make an interesting subject. Quinn looked up, his expression unreadable. Is that how you see me? The drawing captured his quiet strength, the watchful intelligence in his eyes, the subtle humor in the set of his mouth. It was, Olivia realized with sudden clarity, the face of a man she had come to care for deeply. Yes, she answered simply. For a long moment they sat in charged silence. Then Quinn carefully closed the notebook and handed it back to her, his fingers brushing hers. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Nobody's ever seen me that clearly before." Before she could respond, a shout went up from one of the scouts. "Riders coming, 5 of 'em fast." Quinn was on his feet instantly, his hand going to the revolver at his hip. "Stay with Martha," he told Olivia, all softness gone from his expression. Frank emerged from his tent, rifle in hand. "Everybody up, could be nothing, could be trouble." The camp burst into activity as cowboys grabbed weapons and moved to defensive positions. Martha pulled Olivia toward the chuck wagon. "Get my shotgun from under the seat," she instructed calmly. "Probably just travelers, but no sense taking chances." Olivia retrieved the weapon with shaking hands. Violence had been largely theoretical in her sheltered life, but out here it was a constant possibility. As Martha took the shotgun, Olivia peered around the wagon to see 5 riders approaching at a gallop, dust billowing behind them. Quinn and Frank moved to the front of the camp, weapons ready but not raised. The riders slowed as they approached, and Olivia could make out 4 men and a woman. They didn't look like bandits. Their clothes were too fine, their horses too well bred. "That's the Hargrove brand," Martha muttered, squinting at the lead horse. "Big ranch north of here. Wonder what's got them in such a hurry." The riders pulled up several yards from Quinn and Frank. The lead rider, a distinguished-looking man with silver at his temples, raised his hand in greeting. "You folks with the Hollister drive," he called. "That's right," Frank replied cautiously. "Frank Hollister. What can we do for you, James Hargrove?" The man introduced himself. "Own the Double H about 15 miles north. We're tracking a gang that hit our ranch last night. Stole horses and killed one of my men. Thought they might have headed this way." Frank relaxed slightly but kept his rifle ready. "Haven't seen anyone suspicious. When did this happen?" "Just after midnight. They took our best breeding stock and shot my foreman when he tried to stop them." Hargrove's expression was grim. 6 men, well armed. You'd be wise to post extra guards tonight." As the men discussed details of the robbery, Olivia noticed the woman with Hargrove's party watching her with interest. She was elegantly dressed despite being on horseback, with a determined set to her jaw that reminded Olivia of herself. "Thank you for the warning," Frank was saying. "We'll keep an eye out and send word if we see anything." Hargrove nodded. "Much obliged. We're heading back to the ranch now, but my men will continue searching." He turned to the woman. "Catherine, time to head home." The woman frowned. "Father, we've barely begun the search to the south. It'll be dark soon. We're not tracking killers at night." Hargrove's tone brooked no argument. Catherine looked mutinous, but didn't protest further. As the party prepared to leave, she guided her horse toward the chuck wagon where Olivia and Martha stood. "You're with the cattle drive?" she asked Olivia directly. "Yes," Olivia replied, slightly taken aback by the woman's directness. "I assist with cooking and accounts." Catherine studied her with frank curiosity. "Never seen a young woman on a cattle drive before, usually just the trail boss's wife, if anyone." She glanced at Martha, who raised an eyebrow. "How'd you come to be here?" Before Olivia could formulate a polite response, Quinn appeared beside the wagon. "Everything all right here?" he asked, his tone casual but his posture protective. Catherine's gaze shifted to him, a spark of appreciation in her eyes. "Perfectly fine. I was just making conversation with your cook's assistant. Miss Winslow is an essential member of our outfit," Quinn said mildly but with a hint of steel, "and we're preparing to move on, so if you'll excuse us." "Of course." Catherine turned her horse, then looked back at Olivia. "If you ever tire of trail dust, the Double H could use someone with accounting skills. My father's ranch manager is hopeless with numbers." She smiled, a genuine warmth breaking through her aristocratic demeanor. and I wouldn't mind another woman to talk to." With that, she rejoined her party, and they rode north at a steady pace. "Well," Martha said dryly when they'd gone, "seems you've got options, girl." Quinn said nothing, but Olivia noticed a slight tightness around his mouth as he walked away to confer with Frank. That evening the camp was unusually subdued. Extra guards were posted, and everyone kept weapons close at hand. After dinner, Frank gathered the men to discuss precautions. "We'll double the night watch," he announced. "No one rides alone until we're well clear of this area. Quinn, you'll take first watch with Mitch and Colton." As the men dispersed to their assignments, Olivia helped Martha with the washing up. "Do you think those robbers might come here?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Martha considered. "Possible, but not likely. We don't have much worth stealing compared to a big ranch, and 20 armed cowboys makes for a hard target." She glanced at Olivia. "Still, stay close to the wagon tonight and keep this under your bedroll." She handed Olivia a small revolver. "I don't know how to use this," Olivia protested. "Point and pull the trigger," Martha said pragmatically. "Preferably at someone who deserves it." Despite Martha's reassurances, Olivia found sleep elusive that night. Every sound, the shifting of cattle, the soft footsteps of the guards, the occasional call of a night bird made her tense. After hours of restless tossing, she gave up and slipped out of the wagon. The night was clear, stars scattered like diamond dust across the vast sky. Olivia wrapped her shawl tighter against the chill and moved toward the dying embers of the cookfire. As she approached, a figure materialized from the shadows, making her gasp. "Just me," Quinn said softly, lowering his rifle. "What are you doing up?" "Couldn't sleep," she admitted, her heart still racing from the fright. "Too many imaginary bandits in my head." Quinn's expression softened. He gestured to a log by the fire. "Sit. Just finished my watch. I was about to make some coffee." They sat in companionable silence as he rebuilt the fire and set water to boil. Olivia studied his profile in the firelight, the strong line of his jaw, the watchful eyes that missed nothing. "Were you afraid?" she asked suddenly. "When those riders appeared today," Quinn considered the question seriously. "Not afraid, cautious. Out here, strangers can mean danger." "How do you live like that? Always watching, always ready for trouble?" "Same way anyone lives with danger," he replied, measuring coffee into the pot. "You acknowledge it, prepare for it, but don't let it consume you." He glanced at her. "Life's too short to spend it afraid." "Is that why you stopped to help me that day in Fort Stockton?" "Because you weren't afraid of the consequences." Quinn was quiet for a long moment. "I stopped because I saw someone with the courage to stand alone rather than take the easy path." The coffee began to boil, and he moved it from the direct heat. "Made me want to be worthy of that courage." The simple honesty of his words touched something deep inside her. "I wasn't brave," she confessed. "Just desperate and stubborn." "Bravery's often just stubbornness with higher stakes," Quinn replied with a small smile. He poured coffee into 2 tin cups and handed one to her. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, and Olivia felt that now familiar warmth spread through her. They sipped in silence for a while, the vast night sky wheeling above them. "Catherine Hargrove seemed very interested in you," Quinn finally said, his tone carefully neutral. "In my accounting skills, perhaps. In more than that, I'd wager." He stared into his coffee. "The Double H is one of the biggest spreads in the territory. Working there would be comfortable, respectable." Olivia studied him over the rim of her cup. "Are you suggesting I should consider her offer?" "No." The word came quickly, almost sharply, then more measured. "Just acknowledging you have choices now, more than you did in Fort Stockton." "And what would you have me choose, Quinn Forrester?" The question hung between them, weighted with everything unsaid. He met her gaze directly, firelight reflecting in his eyes. "I'd have you choose whatever makes you happy, Olivia Winslow, even if," he stopped. "Even if what?" she pressed gently. Quinn set his cup aside and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I've got nothing to offer a woman like you. No land, no house, just a few $100s saved and prospects that depend on the weather and cattle prices." His voice was low, intense. "But seeing you ride away to some fancy ranch would be the hardest thing I've ever done." The naked honesty in his voice made Olivia's breath catch. She reached out, covering his hand with hers. "I didn't leave my family and refuse a wealthy marriage because I wanted comfort and respectability, Quinn." His eyes searched hers. "What did you want? Freedom. The chance to make my own choices." She smiled softly. "And maybe someone who sees me clearly, as I am." The world seemed to narrow to just the two of them, the crackling fire, the vast star-filled sky. Quinn's hand turned beneath hers, their fingers intertwining. "Olivia," he began, his voice rough with emotion. A sudden shout shattered the moment riders coming, fast. Followed by the sharp crack of gunfire, Quinn was on his feet instantly, pulling Olivia up with him. "Get to the wagon," he ordered, reaching for his rifle. "Stay down and stay with Martha." Before she could respond, more shots rang out and men's voices rose in alarm throughout the camp. Quinn pushed her toward the wagon, then sprinted toward the commotion, rifle at the ready. Heart pounding, Olivia ran to the chuck wagon where Martha was already climbing down, shotgun in hand. "Get under the wagon," Martha instructed calmly. "Less chance of a stray bullet finding you." Olivia complied, crouching in the dirt as chaos erupted around the camp. Through the wagon wheels, she could see men taking cover, returning fire at shadowy figures on horseback who circled the perimeter. Frank's voice rose above the din, barking orders to his men. "Must be the gang Hargrove warned us about," Martha muttered, crouching beside the wagon. "Damn fools. 20 against 6 are poor odds for them." A bullet thudded into the side of the wagon, making Olivia flinch. Another shattered a coffee pot hanging from the tailgate. The attackers were firing wildly, more intent on creating chaos than taking deliberate aim. Through gaps between the defenders, Olivia caught glimpses of the bandits' rough-looking men with bandanas pulled over their faces, firing from horseback as they circled the camp. The cowboys returned fire with more discipline, taking careful aim between shots. One of the attackers cried out and fell from his horse. Another wheeled away, clutching his arm. The remaining riders began to retreat, still firing but clearly realizing they'd miscalculated the camp's defenses. As they withdrew, Olivia breathed a sigh of relief. Then a movement caught her eye, one rider breaking from the others, charging directly toward the chuck wagon. "Martha!" she cried in warning. Martha swung her shotgun toward the approaching threat, but before she could fire, Quinn appeared from nowhere, tackling the older woman to the ground as bullets splintered the wood where she'd been standing. From her position under the wagon, Olivia watched in horror as the rider bore down on them, revolver aimed directly at Quinn, who was still shielding Martha with his body. Without conscious thought, Olivia grasped the small revolver Martha had given her earlier and rolled from beneath the wagon. The rider was so focused on Quinn that he didn't notice her. She raised the gun with shaking hands, aimed as best she could, and pulled the trigger. The report was deafening. The rider jerked, his shot going wild, then toppled sideways from his horse. The animal bolted past the wagon as the man hit the ground hard, his gun flying from his hand. Stunned by what she'd done, Olivia stood frozen, the revolver still extended. Quinn was on his feet instantly, putting himself between her and the fallen bandit. "Olivia," he said urgently, gently taking the gun from her rigid fingers. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head mutely, unable to tear her gaze from the man on the ground. He was groaning, alive but clearly injured. "You hit his shoulder," Quinn told her, his voice gentle but firm. "You saved Martha's life, and mine." Frank and several cowboys rushed over, surrounding the wounded bandit. "Everyone all right here?" Frank demanded. "We're fine," Quinn answered, his arm now around Olivia's shoulders. "Thanks to Miss Winslow's quick thinking." Frank glanced at the fallen man, then back to Olivia with newfound respect. "That was some shooting, miss, especially for your first time." Will he live?" Olivia managed to ask, her voice sounding distant to her own ears. "Unfortunately for him, yes," Frank replied grimly. "He'll face a hangman's noose when we reach the next town with a proper jail." As the men secured the wounded bandit and checked the camp for other injuries, Quinn guided Olivia to a crate by the fire. Martha brought her a cup of whiskey. "Drink," she ordered. "It helps with the shakes that'll come soon." Olivia sipped the burning liquid, feeling its warmth spread through her chest. The reality of what had just happened began to sink in. She'd shot a man, might have killed him if her aim had been slightly different. "I've never—" she began, then faltered. "Few have," Quinn said quietly, sitting beside her. "Wouldn't wish that necessity on anyone, least of all you. But I didn't even think," she continued, struggling to understand her own actions. "I just saw him aiming at you and I—" "You protected people you care about," Martha finished for her, her usual gruffness softened with understanding. "No shame in that." Quinn's hand found hers, warm and steadying. "Try to rest. Dawn's only a few hours away and it's been a long night." Despite the lingering tension in the camp, exhaustion soon overcame Olivia. She fell into a fitful sleep in the wagon, haunted by fractured dreams of gunshots and falling men. She woke at first light to the sounds of the camp stirring, her body aching with tension. When she emerged from the wagon, she found the outfit preparing to move on. The wounded bandit had been bandaged and secured to a spare horse, his hands bound. According to Frank, the man had confirmed they were indeed part of the gang that had robbed the Hargrove Ranch. "We'll take him to the sheriff in the next town," Frank explained as they broke camp. "Should be there by tomorrow afternoon." Throughout the morning, Olivia went through her chores mechanically, her mind still processing the night's events. The cowboys treated her with a new respect, several tipping their hats as they passed, but she found their approval unsettling. What had she done to earn it? Shot a man. Quinn kept a watchful eye on her but maintained a respectful distance, seeming to understand her need for space. It wasn't until their midday rest that he finally approached her as she sat alone beneath the shade of the chuck wagon. "Mind some company?" he asked quietly. She nodded, and he settled beside her, not too close but near enough that she could feel his reassuring presence. "I keep seeing it," she admitted after a long silence. "The moment I pulled the trigger, the way he fell." Quinn nodded, understanding in his eyes. "First time's the hardest. Some folks never get past it." "Have you gotten past it?" He considered her question seriously. "Not past it." "You never forget a man's face when you've had to shoot him." He looked out at the horizon. "But you learn to live with it, to understand why it was necessary." "Does it get easier?" she asked, not sure which answer she feared more. "It shouldn't," Quinn replied simply. "The day taking a life becomes easy is the day you've lost something essential." His honesty was more comforting than platitudes would have been. Olivia felt some of the tightness in her chest ease. "Thank you," she said softly, "for not telling me it was nothing." Quinn's hand found hers, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "Nothing about you could ever be nothing, Olivia Winslow." The warmth in his voice drew her eyes to his. The connection between them, building since that first day in Fort Stockton, suddenly felt undeniable. Before either could speak, however, a rider approached from the north at a gallop. "Looks like one of Hargrove's men," Quinn said, recognizing the brand on the horse. The rider pulled up near Frank, who was consulting with the scout about their afternoon route. After a brief conversation, Frank called Quinn over. Reluctantly, he released Olivia's hand and went to join them. From her position, Olivia could see the three men in serious discussion. The rider handed Frank what appeared to be a letter, which he read with a frown before passing it to Quinn. After a moment, Quinn nodded and the rider departed as quickly as he'd arrived. When Quinn returned to Olivia, his expression was guarded. "Hargroves invited the whole outfit to his ranch," he explained, "as thanks for capturing one of the bandits. Says he's hosting a celebration tomorrow night and wants us all to attend." He paused. It would mean a day's delay, but Frank's inclined to accept. The men could use a night of real food and entertainment. "That seems generous," Olivia commented, sensing there was more to Quinn's reserve. He hesitated, then admitted, "The messenger mentioned that Miss Hargrove specifically hoped you would attend. Seems she's quite taken with the idea of a woman brave enough to travel with a cattle drive." "I see." Olivia studied his face. "And you're concerned because—" "I'm not concerned," he said too quickly, then sighed. "That's not true. The Hargroves represent everything you left behind in Fort Stockton: wealth, position, respectability. And Catherine Hargrove can offer you something I can't: a place among people more like yourself." Olivia felt a flash of irritation. "You presume to know what I want based on where I came from." Quinn looked startled by her sharpness. "No. Because if that were true, I'd still be in Fort Stockton, married to Harold Briggs, hosting tea parties and dying inside." She stood, suddenly needing to move. "I thought you of all people understood that I want more than the life I was born to." "I do understand," Quinn insisted, rising to face her. "That's why I'm afraid, because Hargrove Ranch isn't Fort Stockton. It's freedom with comfort, independence with respect. Everything you deserve without the hardships you've endured these past weeks." The raw honesty in his voice stopped her. "And you think I'd choose that over—" She hesitated, suddenly uncertain how to finish the sentence. "Over what, Olivia?" Quinn asked quietly, his eyes never leaving hers. Before she could answer, Martha called that it was time to move out. The moment broke, leaving the question hanging between them as they returned to their duties. That evening, Frank announced they would indeed accept Hargrove's invitation, arriving at the ranch by midday tomorrow. The Cowboys received the news with enthusiasm, eager for a brief respite from trail life. As Olivia prepared for sleep that night, Martha joined her in the wagon with an unusual proposition. "Got something for you," the older woman said, producing a bundle wrapped in cloth. "Thought you might want to look your best tomorrow." Inside was a dress not new but well made, of deep blue cotton with simple but elegant lines. Olivia ran her fingers over the fabric in surprise. "It was my daughter's," Martha explained. "She's married now, living in California. Left it behind last time she visited." She smiled slightly. "You're about her size, might need taking in at the waist." "Martha, I couldn't—" "Course you can," the older woman interrupted. "Can't have you meeting high society in trail clothes. Besides," she added with a knowing look, "certain cowboys might appreciate seeing you in something other than dust and flour." Olivia felt her cheeks warm. "I'm not trying to impress anyone. Hum." Martha's expression was skeptical. "Well, the offer stands. Dress is yours if you want it." The next morning, as they broke camp and headed toward the Hargrove Ranch, Olivia found herself increasingly nervous. Not about meeting the Hargroves. Her upbringing had prepared her for formal social situations, but about what the visit might reveal about her own heart. Quinn had been right about one thing. The Hargrove Ranch represented a middle path she hadn't considered. a way to maintain her independence without the hardships of trail life. But was that what she truly wanted? As they crested a ridge around noon, the Double H came into view. It was impressive, a sprawling main house of whitewashed adobe, surrounded by numerous outbuildings, corrals, and bunkhouses. Vast pastures stretched in all directions, dotted with cattle and horses. "Biggest spread in 3 counties," Frank commented as they approached. Hargrove started with nothing 20 years ago, built himself an empire. They were met at the entrance to the property by James Hargrove himself, accompanied by his daughter and several ranch hands. Hargrove greeted Frank warmly, then turned to the rest of the outfit. "Welcome to the Double H," he called. "We're grateful for your help with those bandits. The ringleader confessed after we caught up with the others, said your outfit was too well defended to rob." He chuckled. "And that one of you has a dead-eye shot." His gaze fell on Olivia, who had changed into Martha's dress before their arrival. "Miss Winslow, I believe. My daughter has spoken highly of you. We'd be honored if you'd join us in the main house while your companions get settled." Catherine rode forward, smiling warmly. "We so rarely get female visitors, especially ones with such interesting stories." Her glance took in Olivia's transformed appearance appreciatively. "Please say you'll join us for tea." Aware of Quinn watching from nearby, Olivia hesitated only briefly. "Thank you, Miss Hargrove." "That would be lovely." "Catherine, please," the other woman insisted. "I hope we'll be friends." As arrangements were made for the outfit's accommodation, the men in the bunkhouse, Martha in the cook's quarters, and Olivia offered a guest room in the main house, Quinn approached. "Quite a place," he commented, his tone carefully neutral. "Yes," Olivia agreed, equally cautious. "Though I'm sure we won't stay long, just the night as planned," Quinn nodded. "Frank's eager to get back on the trail. We've lost time already." He hesitated. "You look beautiful, by the way. Blue suits you." Before she could respond, Catherine called for her, and Olivia was swept away to the main house. The interior was surprisingly elegant, not ostentatious, but comfortably furnished with pieces that must have been brought at great expense from back east. Over tea, Catherine proved to be intelligent and forthright, with progressive ideas that surprised Olivia. "Father built all this from nothing," she explained as they sat in a sunny parlor. "He believes in rewarding hard work and intelligence, regardless of background." She smiled wryly. "Even in a daughter, which makes him unusual among his peers." "Will you inherit the ranch someday?" Olivia asked, genuinely curious. "Father's training me to run it alongside my brother Thomas, who's back east at university." Catherine's expression turned serious. "Which is why I was so intrigued to meet you. Women with both education and practical experience are rare out here." "I'm hardly experienced," Olivia demurred. "I've only been on the trail a few weeks. But you've adapted quickly by all accounts, and you kept your head during an attack." Catherine leaned forward earnestly. "I meant what I said about needing someone with accounting skills. Our current manager is retiring, and finding someone trustworthy is difficult." Olivia blinked, taken aback by the directness of the offer. "You're offering me a position. You hardly know me." "I'm offering you an opportunity," Catherine corrected. "To use your skills in a place where they'd be valued, where you'd be respected, not just tolerated." The words hit uncomfortably close to Quinn's predictions. Before Olivia could formulate a response, James Hargrove joined them. "I see my daughter's wasting no time," he commented good-naturedly. "She mentioned her idea about hiring you. I think it has merit if you're interested." "It's very generous," Olivia replied carefully, "but I have commitments to the Hollister outfit." "Of course," Hargrove nodded. "But cattle drives end. This could be a more permanent arrangement, something to consider at least." The conversation shifted to preparations for the evening's festivities. but Olivia's mind remained troubled. The offer was tempting in many ways: security, respect, meaningful work. Yet something held her back from embracing it wholeheartedly. That evening, the Hargroves hosted a substantial feast in the ranch's courtyard. Tables groaned with food, a small band played lively tunes, and the Cowboys enjoyed the rare opportunity for relaxation. Local ranchers and their families had been invited as well, creating a festive atmosphere. Olivia, seated at the main table with the Hargroves, found her gaze constantly drifting to Quinn. He sat with Frank and some of the senior cowboys, his manner relaxed but watchful. Several times she caught him looking her way, his expression unreadable in the lantern light. After dinner, as the band struck up a livelier tune, people began to dance in the cleared center of the courtyard. Catherine, who had been deep in conversation with Olivia about the ranch's operations, noticed her distraction. "Your cowboy seems to be avoiding you," she observed shrewdly. Olivia started. "He's not my cowboy." "No," Catherine raised an elegant eyebrow. "Then why haven't you taken your eyes off him all evening?" Before Olivia could protest, she continued, "And why hasn't he stopped watching you since you arrived at our gate?" Heat rose in Olivia's cheeks. "It's complicated." Catherine's expression softened. "It usually is. But perhaps not as complicated as you think." She nodded toward Quinn. "He's coming this way now." Sure enough, Quinn was approaching their table, his hat in his hands. He'd clearly made an effort with his appearance. His shirt was clean, his hair neatly combed, his face freshly shaved. "Miss Winslow," he said formally, with a respectful nod to Catherine, "I wondered if you might honor me with a dance." Olivia's heart quickened. "I'd be delighted, Mr. Forrester." As she stood, Catherine whispered, "Don't overthink it," with a knowing smile. Quinn led Olivia to the dancing area, where several couples were already moving to the music. As his hand settled at her waist, she was acutely aware of the proper distance he maintained between them, respectful but not distant. "You've been hard to reach today," he said as they began to move with the music. "I could say the same of you," she countered gently. Quinn's mouth quirked in acknowledgement. "Fair point. I thought you might need space to consider the Hargroves' offer without me hovering." So he knew. Catherine mentioned it at tea. "And?" His tone was carefully neutral, but his eyes searched hers. "And I told her I have commitments to the Hollister outfit," Olivia replied, watching his reaction closely. Relief flickered across his features, quickly masked. "Those commitments end when we reach Arizona." "Yes," she agreed. "And then I'll need to decide what comes next." They danced in silence for a moment, the unspoken question hanging between them. Finally, Quinn took a breath. "When I saw you today, stepping out of that wagon in that blue dress, looking like you belonged in that big house." He hesitated. "I thought this is where she should be, not eating trail dust and sleeping in a wagon. And is that what you want for me?" Olivia asked, her voice barely audible above the music. "To stay here when you ride on." Quinn's hand tightened slightly at her waist. "What I want." He stopped, struggling visibly with his words. "What I want doesn't matter as much as what's best for you." "And you think you know what's best for me?" There was no heat in her question, only genuine curiosity. "No," he admitted, "but I know what I can offer you, and it's a far cry from this." He nodded toward the elegant surroundings. The music was slowing, drawing them imperceptibly closer. Olivia could feel the solid strength of him, smell the clean scent of soap and leather. "Quinn," she said softly, "do you remember what you told me that first day? About courage?" He nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. "You were the only one who saw it that way. The only one who didn't think I was foolish or selfish or rebellious." She took a steadying breath. "You saw me. Not the banker's daughter, not a potential wife, just me." "I still see you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. That's why he stopped abruptly. Why you what? She pressed gently. The music ended, breaking the moment. Quinn released her reluctantly as couples around them applauded the musicians. May I show you something? He asked instead of answering. Away from the crowd. Olivia nodded, and he led her away from the courtyard toward a small garden at the side of the house. The night was clear, stars brilliant in the vast sky, the sounds of the celebration muted by distance. I've been thinking about what comes next, Quinn said when they were alone. After the drive ends. And, Olivia prompted when he fell silent, and I've saved almost enough to buy a small place. Nothing like this, he gestured toward the ranch house, but land of my own. Good water, decent grazing. He turned to face her fully. I've worked other men's cattle for 8 years. Time I built something for myself. The implications of his words hung in the air between them. Olivia's heart raced, but she needed clarity. Why are you telling me this, Quinn? He took a step closer, close enough that she could see the play of emotions across his face in the moonlight. Because I've fallen in love with you, Olivia Winslow, he said simply. And I'm asking you to consider a future with me. Not one with fine houses and servants, but one where we'd be partners in everything. Where your courage and intelligence would help build something lasting. The directness of his declaration took her breath away. You love me, more than I thought possible, he admitted. Enough to want what's best for you, even if that's not me. Olivia felt tears prick her eyes, but they were tears of a joy so intense it was almost painful. And what if I told you that what's best for me is a man who values my mind as well as my heart? Who sees my courage instead of my disobedience? Who would build a life with me, not for me? Hope dawned in Quinn's eyes. I'd say that man sounds smarter than most. He is, Olivia agreed, stepping closer still. He saw something in me that no one else did, not even myself. Quinn's hands rose to frame her face, his touch gentle as if she were something infinitely precious. I love you, Olivia, have almost since that first day. And I love you, she whispered, the truth of it filling her completely. I think I started falling the moment you said I had courage. When his lips finally met hers, Olivia felt as though her entire life had been leading to this moment. The kiss was tender yet passionate, reverent yet claiming. His arms encircled her, strong and sure as hers wound around his neck. When they finally parted, breathless, Quinn rested his forehead against hers. If you choose me, choose us, it won't be easy. Building something from scratch never is. I didn't leave everything behind for easy, Olivia reminded him. I left for the chance to choose my own path. And I choose you, Quinn Forrester. You and the life we'll build together. His smile was brilliant in the moonlight. We should probably get back before they send a search party. As they walked hand in hand toward the celebration, Olivia felt a deep sense of rightness, as if puzzle pieces had finally fallen into place. Catherine spotted them immediately upon their return, her knowing smile suggesting she'd anticipated this outcome. When the evening drew to a close, she drew Olivia aside. I see you've made your choice, she said without preamble. I'd be disappointed to lose a potential friend and colleague, except you look happier than when you arrived. Olivia smiled. I am. But I want you to know how much I appreciate your offer. It meant a great deal to be valued for my abilities. The offer remains open, Catherine said generously. Should you ever change your mind, though I suspect you won't. Her gaze drifted to Quinn, who stood talking with Frank. He seems a good man. The best I've known, Olivia confirmed. The next morning, as the Hollister outfit prepared to depart, James Hargrove approached Quinn and Olivia as they stood by the chuck wagon. Miss Winslow, my daughter tells me you've declined our offer of employment, he said directly. She also mentioned why. His gaze shifted to Quinn, assessing but not unkind. "Young man, what are your intentions toward this lady?" Quinn straightened, meeting the older man's gaze directly. "To marry her, sir, if she'll have me, and to build a life worthy of her." Hargrove nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Good. A woman of Miss Winslow's character deserves nothing less." He reached into his vest pocket and withdrew an envelope. "Consider this a token of my appreciation for your outfit's assistance with the bandits." Quinn accepted the envelope with a curious frown. Opening it, his eyes widened slightly. Inside was a deed to a parcel of land along with a bank draft. "Sir, I can't accept this," he began. "You most certainly can," Hargrove interrupted. "That's a section of land adjoining my northern boundary. Good water, excellent grazing. The draft is for enough to get you started. Consider it an investment. I expect a fair return when you're established." Stunned, Quinn looked to Olivia, whose expression mirrored his shock. "Mr. Hargrove, this is extraordinarily generous, but nothing," the rancher said firmly. "I wasn't born to wealth, Forrester. Had help along the way from men who saw potential in me. Now I'm doing the same." He glanced at Olivia. "Besides, I suspect Miss Winslow will ensure my investment is well managed." As Hargrove walked away, Olivia took Quinn's hand. "Well," she said, a smile blooming on her face, "it seems our future has arrived sooner than expected." Quinn shook his head in disbelief. "I can't quite believe it." "Believe it," Frank said, approaching with Martha. "Hargrove's a shrewd businessman, wouldn't make the offer if he didn't think you'd succeed." Martha eyed them both critically. "So, when's the wedding? Before or after we reach Arizona?" Quinn and Olivia exchanged glances, neither having considered the practical timing. "I suppose that depends on whether we continue to Arizona or return here," Quinn said. "The land will keep," Olivia pointed out. "We made a commitment to see the drive through." Frank waved a dismissive hand. "Drive can spare you both. Most of the hard country's behind us now. Besides," he added with a rare smile, "Martha says she's tired of watching you two make eyes at each other." "I said no such thing," Martha protested, though her eyes twinkled. "But I did say life's too short to waste time when you found the right person." 2 weeks later, Olivia Winslow became Olivia Forrester in a simple ceremony performed by a traveling preacher who had stopped at the Hargrove Ranch. Catherine stood as her witness, while Frank stood for Quinn. The entire Hollister outfit attended, along with the Hargroves and neighboring ranchers. As Quinn slipped a simple gold band onto her finger, purchased with some of his savings from the nearest town, Olivia felt a profound sense of completion. This was what she had sought when she walked away from Fort Stockton and her family's expectations. Not just freedom from an unwanted marriage, but the freedom to choose a partnership based on love and mutual respect. After the ceremony, as guests celebrated with food and music in the Hargroves' courtyard, Quinn led Olivia away for a moment of privacy. "Having second thoughts, Mrs. Forrester?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. "Not a single one, Mr. Forrester," she replied, reaching up to touch his face. "Are you?" "Only that I might not be worthy of you," he admitted, "but I plan to spend every day trying to be." Olivia shook her head. "You saw my worth when no one else did. How could I not see yours?" Their kiss was a promise of partnership, of growth, of a future built together rather than dictated by others' expectations. 5 years later, Olivia stood on the porch of their ranch house, watching as Quinn taught their 3-year-old son Thomas to sit on his first pony. Their daughter Eleanor, just a year old, babbled happily in her arms. The ranch had prospered under their joint management. Olivia's head for figures and Quinn's knowledge of cattle had proved a formidable combination. They'd repaid Hargrove's investment within 3 years and expanded their holdings modestly, but steadily. Martha and Frank visited regularly during the off-season, having become surrogate grandparents to the children. Catherine Hargrove, now co-manager of the Double H with her brother, remained a close friend and business ally. As for Olivia's family in Fort Stockton, reconciliation had come gradually. Her father's pride had eventually yielded to curiosity about his grandchildren, and her mother found unexpected happiness in visiting the ranch, free from the constraints of town society. Her sisters, inspired by her example, had both made marriages of choice rather than convenience. "Mama, look," Thomas called excitedly as Quinn led the pony in a small circle. "I'm riding like Papa." "I see, darling," she called back, smiling at the picture they made her son with Quinn's blue eyes and her own stubborn chin. Her husband still as handsome as the day she'd met him, though with a few more lines around his eyes from squinting into the sun. Quinn looked up, catching her gaze across the yard. The love in his eyes was as strong as ever, deepened by years of shared challenges and joys. He said something to Thomas, then secured the boy in the saddle before crossing to join her on the porch. "Happy?" he asked, slipping an arm around her waist and pressing a kiss to their daughter's curly head. Olivia leaned into his strength, thinking of the frightened young woman who had once stood alone on a street in Fort Stockton, facing an uncertain future. "Beyond measure," she replied, and it was nothing less than the truth. She had found not just freedom but fulfillment, not despite the difficult choice she had made, but because of it. In refusing to accept the life others had planned for her, she had found the courage to build one of her own choosing. And in Quinn Forrester, she had found not just a husband but a partner who valued that courage above all else. As the sun set behind the mountains that marked the boundary of their land, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be, not because fate or family had placed her there, but because she had chosen this life, this man, this love. And in that choice lay true freedom,